Hi there, I'm Mark, and I'm going to take the opportunity to show you what freedom cells are and the benefits of them. I'm going to start off with what is a freedom cell and why does it matter. But to understand that, it's important to take a current look at the way the structure of society is formed. And we know that, for instance, someone that I'm just calling Normia as an example, that lives in a country like the US, that the government is run by some people that Norm will probably never meet, right? They're somewhere in the populace, and we don't know where they live or how to interact with them. And Norm has to put a lot of effort to share information with the government. Really, like he can't say that he doesn't consent, and it makes it difficult for him to interact. And similarly, when it comes to Norm's family, there are legal structures that will focus on the individual. And so Norm can't even really protect his family. He can't protect his kids. The policies that are in place basically say that if they want to take his children away for whatever reason, they have the right. And there's very little that Norm can do in that process. So, so this is kind of the lack of defense we have at the moment. It's very one-sided. Let's move on. In the Freedom Cell, though, as an alternative, or also the Octologue, I'll get into that, the structure of things look different. In a Freedom Cell, we'll find people that are included are pretty much our children or our parents that could be included in this. So even though we're looking at just two people with their kids, there could be more people that's represented here. And this is uh, like I said, the Freedom Cell, or also you could call it Octologue. And basically, what we're talking about is 8 people here, and uh, the octagon that is being represented here has is like a table. So consider this a table, and people are sitting at the table. And what the key thing they're trying to do now is these two individuals will start to learn how to create the Octolog or the Freedom Cell and how to find 6 other people to join them. And we'll go through that in the course, but ultimately the purpose here is to get those 6 people first and then start to move forward as a unit. And then we're going to show you how to do that. And this group commitment was first seen during hunters and gatherers. This is something that's nothing new. This is something we do as a species, and we will eventually build groups out of necessity. So this is going to happen now with us or not. And usually it will take 4 men in the traditional sense. It was 4 men that would work together and try and establish, to build their homes and grow food and help defend each other. And they would also try and help each other find partners and have kids. And that was a traditional sense going back, 3,000 years ago, kind of thing. So this is not new, but it's evolutionary. We're learning more about this, and I'm very glad to share it. So moving on, we have found the other 6 people, and now we have the components for Freedom Cell, and that's the beginning cell. So this representation is what I'm showing here. It's just the Freedom Cell, and once that group gets into an organized structure and they're working together and they've got their goals set out and they got the ethics worked out in the actions, they could evolve into what is called like an octologue. And octo meaning 8 and log dealing with dialogue. And this allows them to basically form a society or rather a mutual aid. And this gives us a legal entity that we can interact with the government, and it can become a way of protecting us against policies that are put in place by the government. If we take a little bit of a zoom out and see, once we've got our freedom cell, we can then expand that easily to find other people that want to form their own freedom cells. And instead of them joining us, what we do is we help them form their own cells, and in that process, we can discover a larger group of a meta cadre. So meta cadre is something like having 152 in this case people. It depends, but it's a larger group that has a larger influence. And once that group has established, they can make a larger a legal structure. So this would be more like an umbrella kind of a non-profit organization that would be legally recognized that all the 152 participants will be part of as members. So let's move forward. Yeah. Once they've been organized themselves amongst themselves, they actually form into a holomat again, and this is where there's actual structure. Each group can be focused on specific things. One of the things that is recommended would be a legal awareness kind of group that is keeping an eye on the government. And that is something that, today it's very difficult to know what is it that's really important that the government's doing, because most of the information we receive in the news is frivolous. There isn't really any value in that information, and the important things are hidden. So in this sense, we can actually have a couple people focusing on the important aspects that the government is making changes on, and we can respond to that. All right, so let's move and take a closer look at how this information that we receive, and let's just take a look at it like, if someone in this group has an idea of some sort, or they learned about something that they knew is important for us to basically maintain our group, they can then share it, and it allows us to have a discussion. You get information that you can receive, and then you go out and you share it with other people, and you see, is that information, do I have all the facts, do I have all the information that I need to know that this is valid or not? And in that discussion, hopefully we decide that that information is of value, and if it is, then we can share it with other groups. And in doing so, we basically start to get more people aware much faster, because they can use their own intellect and their own reasoning to decide if that information is valid. And if they come to the same conclusion, then we can move forward to actually sharing it with the entire group. And in this process, usually it's much quicker in adoption, right? So if we zoom out, and now you have a whole group of 152 people and more that have been informed about your idea, that has been vetted and is considered valuable, and much quicker to share information like that. You can consider some of the challenges that we face today when it comes down to information, being that a lot of the information we currently receive doesn't really help improve our lives, but rather dilutes high quality information from us being received, and it ends up becoming kind of lost with all the irrelevant poor information. But simply we can have groups of individuals that have access to high quality information and not be inundated with information that is not helping them, and we can do it pretty quickly with the structure. So let's move on. Yeah. So the next question is, how does the Cell help with government corruption, really? Like, how do we interact with the government? And I would like to present you a scenario between a larger metacadre and a government, and that is, when a freedom cell attains its mutual aid, its legal status, it has the ability to put on the record unresolved disputes and complaints, and this kind of builds up over time and is international, can be recognized internationally. So when we do find ourselves in a situation where there's some kind of dictator, making policies, and we have a group of individuals that are keeping our eye on the important information about the government, then we can receive that information, and again we can look at it in our group of 8 and decide, is it something we need to respond with, right? So you got the next. So receive that information, and again, like I explained in the previous example, that information can be vetted, and we can see if this information that we want to take action against. And when we do decide that, we can actually form our response, and send them that we do not consent. Send them a message that is legally binding, that says we do not consent with that, and it gives us a stronger voice. And in doing this, also we also market it, we spread information to other people that can see we're actually doing something and we're having a movement. And the question though is, this is dealing with the situation between the government and the people. And if we consider what's going on right now, that our governments are basically lost. They are now at the mercy of the United Nations. Things change up. So what happens in that scenario? And so let's see. Okay, so the United Nations comes in, for instance. Now is a higher awareness of the need for us to work together. And again, that's just representing United Nations here and World Economic Forum. And we receive more information because they have their own policies, and we can then use that to build more meta cadres and respond in a bigger sense towards them. So once we have enough individuals not participating in foreign agent practices, okay, um, so once we have people that understand that there are alternatives, and it's easier to build these groups, right? Because they can see it works. And I'm going to show you why, one of the key focuses on why these groups work. But part of this is that we're showing the people that are participating in the government, system, that the system they're involved with isn't going to provide, or isn't a solution to how we can actually look after ourselves and make sure that we have everything we need. And ultimately, that there's a psychological process here where we are affecting the people within, like policemen and people that are working in enforcing these policies of theirs, to give them an opportunity to say, I don't need to do this, I can leave. And once we have enough participants that are not engaging in foreign agent practices, they will fail to keep their positions and may be removed, or in some cases leave due to public shame. So these are kind of the influences we have as a group on the government. And when that happens, when we start to see the government failing because, the public servants that once had no alternative support systems will come to realize that they have other choices, and many of them could leave their offices. As the system is designed, it does not take that many of them to fail for entire systems to come to a dead standstill. So the idea is just saying that by influencing them over time, that we actually do break down the process of the functionality of the government. The government entities will ultimately fail in their operations. This is for certain. Like, there's a definite, that's going to happen at the end of the day anyway. But this allows us to still maintain our own quality of life while they're falling apart. We don't have to be dragged into it. So the next thing is, what is the vision of a freedom cell? Like, really, we dealt a little bit with how we can deal with government entities and foreign entities, but that's only part of this. Really, what we need to do is establish, the vision of the freedom cell. And the freedom cell is really designed to allow us to take care of our needs. So some of those needs are, for instance, food. We need to make sure we get water. We need to make sure that we have a place that's safe. And in the freedom cell structure, we focus on our needs like growing food, having access to clean water, and so on. But that is not the most beneficial aspect of the structure. Like I said, that in a freedom cell, we're focusing on the physical aspects and projects that are allowing us to improve our lives. But the real benefit is that we can get an opportunity to be our most creative and find a place where we're able to really make a difference in the quality of lives by solving problems that we found. And through the work of John David Garcia and Bob Podolsky, we have become aware of this creative benefit within this group. So that's really the value. And that's going to be key, because that's just representing a creative force here, the sculptor, and that allows us to build little like teaching programs, how to grow your food, how to build a home, how to get clean water, or how to get energy, renewable energies, and the alternative energies. And these are things that we can come up with to help the local community also, be able to establish their needs without having to or establish ways to solve their needs without having to rely on the government. So there's already an impetus in this process to really get us working. And so I'm going to quickly show you the other side of this is like one of the most common challenges an individual will face during, you know, difficult times, and let's say the UN comes in, is that illness takes place, right? We get sick, and if you're alone, it's very difficult to maintain, you know, the support for your needs if you're sick, right? But with the Freedom Cell, they're able to take care of you, right? You have another person that can take care of you, and you have the other individuals that can focus on, you know, continuing with the work. But just keep in mind, though, that this is still a small group, and even if one person gets sick, it has quite a lot of ramifications for the group. So, the preference is not, you know, cure, but prevention, right? That's the prevention is always better than a cure, right? So, an important example of health benefits in a freedom cell is really like how do we prevent us from getting sick? And of course, let me just move on here. Of course, sleep is really important, right? So sleep becomes a detrimental aspect of our lives, and we all need around about 8 hours sleep. And so although I haven't had, you know, sleeping for 8 hours in a long time, you know, 7 is usually the max I can get. But in this group of 8 people, we can arrange so that, you know, we are protected, we're safe while we're sleeping, and that's really important to make sure that we in a good condition to operate. And in many cases, people that try and go do, you know, the survival thing out in the wild, if they try and do that alone, they are putting themselves at risk in the sense of they cannot sleep as well because they feel, you know, in many cases they're in a new environment, and just naturally that stress, you know, makes it difficult for them to sleep. Or if it's now just a emergency like an earthquake or something like that, it's also difficult. But you know, when you have a group of 8, you can arrange for this process of 2 people looking after the other 6 while they're sleeping for 4 hours, and then you can move on and have a shift change for another 2 people to come in and take over. So you know, you're not going extensively without sleep, and people are able to organize themselves so that we can maintain that as a goal. So this is really one of the major benefits. You cannot, you know, not sleep. Everybody needs sleep. So consider that. Like, how would you deal with making sure that your family is safe and can sleep? And there are people making sure that you know that that's happening. How would you deal with that if you were alone, if you're just with your family? So most people in that case end up surrendering, right? So if the government comes in, they end up going for the government support. Let's take another look at a major issue that we face as society kind of struggles to move on, yeah, and respond to what's going on, is that we deal with conflict. Conflict is a major problem in trying to grow this movement, and we've all dealt with that. And to some extent, the sad truth is that when we have just 2 people, you know, trying to work together, that it's going to end up in a conflict of dispute. And most of the time, you lose trust. You're unable to then, you know, continue working with them, because if you relying on them for your needs to be met and you can't trust them, it's a very difficult situation. And ultimately, it means that we end up separating. And this is where we're getting stuck generally in this movement of the freedom cells, is that we are not able to maintain tolerance within different opinions. But with the freedom cell and the octologue, we have a different opportunity. Now, unfortunately, even if you take 3 people, for instance, so you know that's not a bad option. Is 3 people? It's better than, you know, just 2. But in the event of only 3 people, usually is still not enough tolerance, there's still not enough there to make sure there's support to go get through and work together, and ultimately they do separate. But in a octologue or a if you have 4 people, now we're talking about the perfect dynamic to get through a discussion that might cause conflict. And so what you have is someone that's going to pause it. Someone that's basically in a disagreement with someone else, and you have two support individuals that, let me see if I can play that again. Two support individuals that are there to focus on the individuals that are restless, or they're in conflict with one another. And that changes the dynamic, because if you have someone with you, then you're more likely to feel like, okay, I can get through this. So four people is what it takes to really get through it. And when you got eight, you've got a much better process. And with the Octologue, what we have is the power of calling on a council. So in other words, if it's a big deal, if it's something that's going to really disrupt, our functionality, we can come together and we can have a proper discussion. And that is something that is just not found nowadays. We just don't pay attention. When our family relatives or whatever have a disagreement or so on, do we come together as families anymore? Do we really do that? And at work, how is those things designed is usually that the individuals that were involved in that dispute would sit down in front of the boss, and kind of, it's something that's taken care of privately. But at the end of the day, we're not doing it. We're not doing the process of actually helping and making sure that we can continue with the higher values. With the Octolog, we can do that. So now, when we're in a meeting, a lot of times, the reason why we don't have meetings like that is because it takes time. If we want to have change, if we want to really be involved with making a change in the world, we need to be dedicated in putting attention to that topic, and we need to put time. And these are the two things that people really don't want to give out, but this is what it's going to take. The good news is that with an octolog structure, there's a limitation in how long things are going to take. Everybody gets a chance to have some time to speak, which is really important for ethical communication and getting to know one another. And in that process, if you're taking eight people, if everybody gets about 10 minutes, we're looking at an hour and a half meeting. Maybe we go to 2 hours, but you can take really complex subjects. Everybody can have a word in it. Many people probably won't, many people will stay quiet and not even get involved, but they can at least say at the end of the day, yes, they agree or they don't. That's what we do need, is we need these eight people to agree on, what is it that they want to do to move forward. And it's easier done in a group of eight, because the individuals that have issues, can we can find solutions to those concerns that they might have, and continue a higher sense of tolerance in a difference of opinion or disagreement. Or if it's now just that we need to mobilize and get action on something, it's much easier to do that in a short time period. And the real benefit is that we can do this even on the meta cadre. Like, you can take, the 152 people or even thousands of people that can come together, and in a matter of 2-3 days, we can actually have everybody's viewpoint and have a proper discussion that's ethical, that gets to hear all the aspects and share that information in a matter of 3 days in a large group. And then we can actually see, do we need to improve. So being organized like this really allows us to deal with complicated situations very quickly, but it's going to take practice. It's not going to happen like that immediately, but that's where we can go. So yeah, the beautiful thing about the octologs, freedom cells, is that instead of us just separating, instead of us just being in disagreement and not working with one another, we're able to maintain that tolerance of being able to work together, and then use that difference, use that disagreement to basically grow and enhance the movement. We do know that the people that are involved in these movements have got similar values to us. That's why we are with them. So when it comes down to being able to actually recognize, hey, there is some things that I still value in you, even though that we might have disagreements of other things. Those values that I originally connected you with are the most important, not these small minutiae. They say the devil's in the details, right? Just because the details can end up derailing you. And if we put it on focus, how do we help this person? How do we help these two people kind of move on and be able to see that the future can be better? And this is what the beautiful thing about how the growth of the freedom cell can occur is through conflict. One of the ways to do it. And if someone wants to separate, they want to move on, one of the responsibilities a freedom cell can take is like helping that individual set up their own freedom cell. And so in this process, what we find is that the freedom cell can start to grow. We can have a couple people move into a new group, and over time, we're going to get more members, and then we're going to help them get members. And then right at the right time, once we've actually gotten to a stage where we're functioning properly, we go through the process, then we do the separation. And I don't know if you've noticed, but this is not much different than looking at biological cells moving. And that's part of the beauty about David Garcia's work, is that he shows us how we're really playing like cells in a bigger body. And we can work. If we understand that, we can actually learn from the cells in our bodies and around us, and act in a very similar way. And so this way we kind of have this duplication of the groups, and we maintaining a growth in the movement, because the movement is really important to understand. What is that movement all about? That movement is really allowing us to have the quality of lives that we deserve. So I'm going to leave you with that, because that, in essence, kind of gives you all the tools that are required, that we can have to improve our lives, to deal with the situation we're living in right now. And thank you for your time and your effort. Appreciate it.